Before we get started, a quick warning. This video contains real images, case details, and autopsy-related content that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. July 26, 2015, 21-year-old Lauren Agee was found dead at the base of a cliff near Center Hill Lake, Tennessee. She had spent the night camping on a steep, dangerous bluff with 3 other people, one of them her close friend, another her friend's boyfriend, and at least one other man she barely knew at all. The next morning, as a wakeboarding tournament was underway, a fisherman spotted something unusual floating in a nearby cove. It was bright pink, Lauren's shorts. Moments later, they discovered her body floating face down in the water. Authorities quickly ruled Lauren's death an accident, a drunken fall from the cliff. But the deeper you look, the least likely that's what actually happened. Law enforcement never identified an exact spot where Lauren supposedly fell. They simply assumed it was somewhere near the campsite, but there were no signs of a fall, no broken branches, no disturbed vegetation, no blood on the rocks or trees, stuff that you would see if someone fell down a cliff. And based on the terrain, it would have been virtually impossible for a body to fall from that campsite and end up in the water on its own. The slope is obstructed by trees, brush, and uneven rock. Okay, so Lauren was at the campsite with 3 other people, and all 3 gave conflicting accounts of what happened that night. That's suspicious. She was last seen on July 25th, but shockingly, her so-called friends didn't report her missing until almost 4 p.m. the next day, nearly 14 hours later. They didn't search for her, they didn't notify anyone, they only said something when they were confronted by law enforcement. Here's who was with her. Hannah Palmer, which was Lauren's friend who invited her to the trip. Hannah later claimed she didn't report Lauren missing because she assumed Lauren had left to meet someone. Aaron Lilly, who is Hannah's boyfriend, with a history of domestic violence and DUIs, he told police the group had been too drunk to remember what happened, and he was also overheard telling Hannah, his girlfriend, to stick to the story. Chris Stout, the man in the hammock, he claimed he woke up in his hammock and Lauren was just gone. Lauren had reportedly shared the hammock with him, making him the last known person to see her alive. Of the 3, Lauren really only knew Hannah. She barely knew Aaron, and she didn't know Chris at all. And after giving their initial statements, all 3 quickly lawyered up, refused polygraph test, and cut off cooperation with investigators. The day after Lauren's body was found, Chris Stout posted this on Instagram. Wakefest 2015 went pretty good this year. Met some new friends that made it awesome. His new friend was found dead in the lake, and that's awesome. Also something to note, none of the 3, Chris, Hannah Palmer, or Aaron Lilly, attended Lauren's funeral. Now, given that Hannah and Lauren were close friends, her absence raised some eyebrows among family and neighbors for sure. And just weeks later, after Lauren's death, Hannah and Aaron moved to Florida together, leaving Tennessee behind. And here's something that might shock you like it shocked me. There was actually a 5th person at the campsite the night Lauren died. His name was Brix Gambrell, someone completely omitted from police reports and never mentioned in the group's original statements to law enforcement. The public only learned about Brix much later when private investigator Sheila Wysocki uncovered his involvement through depositions and independent interviews. Sheila put it on her podcast, quote, "When I first started investigating this case, I had no idea Brix even existed. It wasn't until much later that I realized who he was, and that the other 3 had never mentioned his name or whereabouts that weekend." Sheila confirmed through Chris Stout's deposition that Brix had been with them on the boat, at the bar, and was part of the group that night. Yet somehow he was kept out of every initial police report. So who was he? Brix went to high school with Lauren and Hannah, but Lauren's mother said she never hung out with him. He was mainly friends with Aaron Lilly, not Lauren. Despite being present that night, he avoided all contact with the police. A close friend of Chris Stout later told Sheila's team that Chris privately expressed fear and suspicion about Brix, saying Brix gave him the heebie-jeebies. According to this friend, Chris even hinted that Brix may have harmed Lauren, and that Aaron may have witnessed something and helped cover it up. Just like Chris Stout, Brix took to Instagram with an odd post. Just 2 days after Lauren's death, he posted, "Wakefest 2015 was one to remember." But that's not as strange as this. A few days after Lauren's death, Brix showed up uninvited to Lauren's house. Sherry Smith, Lauren's mother, said Brix acted nervous and strange, asking her, "Do you know what happened to Lauren?" despite having been there himself. She believed he wasn't there to comfort the family. He was there fishing for information. And yet to this day, Brix Gambrell has never made a public statement about what happened that weekend. Now, during that civil case, Aaron Lilly, Chris Stout, and Hannah Palmer all invoked their Fifth Amendment rights, refusing to testify. Brix Gambrell, though, mentioned as a defendant, there's no record he testified or gave a statement, but it looks like he appeared in court, so I'm not sure. So, was this really an accidental fall? Lauren's family doesn't think so. Neither do the private investigators they hired. And even some law enforcement officers who were on the scene, but they were outside of the jurisdiction of the investigation, they voiced that they had serious doubts. Also, there was one witness that said they heard some splashing and arguing coming from the direction of the campsite at night. And there was another man, Chris Brown, he reported seeing something suspicious in the early morning hours, but was never interviewed by law enforcement. And there's the issue of the location of Lauren's body. She was found fully dressed, floating face down in a calm cove, a location that doesn't match any natural fall path from the cliff. In fact, the water current was moving in the opposite direction. This means her body would have ended up towards the marina, not the cove where it was discovered, which means the only thing that makes sense for her body to end up in that cove is she was placed there. Gravity and water flow just doesn't support the story that she naturally wound up in that cove. There was also this strange triangular marking on Lauren's chest. At one point, some speculated it matched the shape of the canoe, the same canoe Aaron and Chris used to get back from the cliff that morning, the theory being that they moved Lauren's body after she died, trying to make it look like an accident. Authorities later claimed the mark came from the storage locker of the police boat where Lauren's body was held face down after recovery. But video analysis by Gray Hughes Investigates suggested those marks did not match that boat's interior. So I'm not sure where that marking came from. Maybe the canoe? The official ruling was that Lauren died from an accidental fall off the cliff, made worse by alcohol and possible drowning. But the autopsy told a different story. Lauren had blunt force trauma, multiple broken bones, and very little water in her lungs, strongly suggesting she was already dead before she hit the water. And here's a tragic part of the investigation. The investigators never tested for sexual assault, but private experts later pointed out troubling signs of bruising on her neck and inner thighs, a possible bite mark, a broken nose, and indications around her neck and eyes that she may have been strangled. Not fatally, but violently. And none of this was addressed in the official autopsy report. From day one, investigators treated Lauren's death as an accident. There was no real crime scene investigation, no evidence preservation, no suspect interviews beyond the initial statements. So it seems like the most likely scenario is something happened at the campsite, an accident, a fight, or something darker like a physical assault. And instead of calling for help, the people with Lauren chose silence over responsibility. Despite public pressure and years of scrutiny, no charges have ever been filed. The case remains open, well, I guess closed because it was deemed an accident. It can get reopened, but it hasn't, unfortunately. Lauren's death is still officially classified as an accident. Her family continues to fight, convinced the truth is being hidden, not by the police, but by the people who were with her that night. Lauren was a 21-year-old college student with her whole life ahead of her. She went on a weekend trip with people she barely knew except for one, and she never came home. The evidence doesn't point to a simple fall. It points to a group of people who know way more than they've ever admitted. People who lawyered up, stayed silent, and walked away without consequences. Lauren's mother, Sherry Smith, has spent nearly a decade fighting for answers, hiring private investigators, filing lawsuits, and exposing what law enforcement chose not to pursue. To this day, no one has been charged, no one has been arrested, and no one is being held accountable. This doesn't mean the case is closed forever, because the truth has a way of surfacing. Thanks for listening and helping spread the word about Lauren's case. Hopefully, justice will be served.